Hi, everyone. Welcome to our event here tonight with Yung Pueblo for his new book, Clarity and Connection. He's in conversation with Ian Daniel. My name is Evan Karp. I'm the events manager for Booksmith. We're an independent bookstore and a mainstay of San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district since 1976. So without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce tonight's stars. Ian Daniel is a filmmaker, writer, and Emmy-nominated producer. Daniel recently co-directed There's Something in the Water, a documentary film that explores the topic of environmental racism in Canada, which made its world premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival and is currently streaming on Netflix. Daniel was the co-host and executive producer of the Emmy-nominated television show Gaycation on Viceland, where he and actor Elliot Page explore LGBTQ culture around the world. And Diego Perez was born in Ecuador and immigrated to the United States as a child. He grew up in Boston and attended Wesleyan University. During a silent Vipassana meditation course in 2012, he saw that real healing and liberation were possible. He became more committed to his meditation practice while living in New York City. The results he witnessed firsthand moved him to describe his experiences in writing. The pen name Yung Pueblo means young people and is meant to convey that humanity is entering an era of remarkable growth and healing, when many will expand their self-awareness and release old burdens. Diego's online presence as Yung Pueblo, as well as his books, Inward and Clarity and Connection, are meant to serve those undertaking their own journey of personal transformation. Today, Diego resides in Western Massachusetts with his wife, where they live quietly and meditate daily. Diego, congratulations on the book, and we're very happy to have you back here with us. Ian, thank you so much for leading the conversation. I am very excited to stop talking and turn it over to you two.
Thank you so much.
Hey, friend.
It's so good to see you, man. I don't
So
think
congratulations.
Thank you. We haven't hung out since before the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, we were in a little coffee shop. We obviously didn't see this coming.
But we spent a really good day together, though. It was like I think we spent like 5 hours together and just going hard, talking about everything and about writing.
Yeah, and and I think then actually you were talking about, I think you were in the process. Well, I do remember that I came over to your house and we were, we have at the time kind of had a group of friends that were meditating together. And you had that sort of whiteboard where I was like I was joking and making like quotes up for you. But I think you were in the process then, I think of writing this book. And I think you and I were kind of talking about sort of, the style of Inward, which we have here, which I think a lot of people are fans of Inward and of you and of your Instagram writing and presence and are here today. So we want to say hi and thank you for coming, everyone. And I think that I just want to say to start off, I mean, I'm hoping that I know people are paying for this and buying your book and here for a purpose. And I just want to really have the intention of sort of like imitating your writing and hope that people can come away with this feeling, I guess, a little bit more whole, a little bit lighter, a little bit more healed, a little less hurting or likely to hurt people. So if we can achieve any of those things in a subtle way, I would feel very happy about that. And I think I set that intention because obviously we're here to talk about your book, but as friends, we really can go deep and talk about the issues and the inner work and just kind of the bigger picture as well. So I just want to go there if we can.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about whatever arises naturally.
Okay, so you were talking about Inward, which had a kind of specific style in a sense of, I guess, in a way, a more condensed writing.
Yeah. When I was thinking about it,
kind of like even haiku type style, where it's just like super simple. The information is really distilled, but impactful, right? Like the symbols land, the information lands. And that's fared really well. And people, like even my sister loves it and talks about how much it's impacted her. And I think that, did that come up on my screen, sir? And I think that we had talked at your house about how your writing was trying to kind of like expand a little bit out of that container. And I was saying, I really liked when you would dig a little deeper and write longer pieces. And so I was really happy to see in your new book, which I've already stated, Clarity and Connection, I was noticing that you're kind of experimenting with longer form. I mean, you
Yeah,
still have
for
some of
sure.
the short form, of course,
Mhm.
and the longer form is kind of coming into play. And I think you and I were talking about that. So I think it'd be good to kind of start off with, your journey from inward to clarity and connection, and why specifically that title, and like what that title really means to you. Um,
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. So I love that. I mean, that clear observation. So clarity and connection is probably has twice the word count that inward has. So it's like double the size. And it's not like double the pages, it's just more content. And I realized that when I started writing after Inward had been published, I wasn't so much inclined towards all the like super hyper minimalistic format that I originally was working inside of back in like, because Inward was really written between 2015 and 2017. And I did add a few new pieces when the revised version was released, but even then it was still that super lean format. But just knowing that the purpose of Inward was really for personal transformation. It's like for just the individual, for them to get to know themselves, to build a new sort of like introspective format with which they can see themselves through as they move through this personal journey that we're all kind of going through. But then I wanted to ask myself what comes after. And one thing that I noticed in my own journey and in the people around me who are also you know being really serious about their introspection, they all come out with a new sense of clarity, and then that clarity very naturally helps them develop deeper connections. So I wanted to continue that type of work in clarity and connection, like continue that like personal transformation vibe, but then include more about how do we interact with our friends, how do we interact with our family members, how do we make our connections with our intimate partners even more, more special, more deep, more harmonious, and connect that to our personal transformation work. And at the end of the book too, I also talk a lot more about humanity as a collective. But it felt like that natural sort of like bouncing off point was like, first, you focus on yourself and you have to do your own personal work. And then how does life change for you after that?
Yeah, I was going to say the first two words of this book are heal yourself. And I believe that's true, but I think that seemed pretty intentional. That would be the beginning. Yeah, heal yourself, but don't rush. Help people, but have boundaries. Love others, but don't let them harm you. Love yourself, but don't become egotistical. Stay informed, but don't overwhelm yourself. Embrace change, but keep pursuing your goals. So, you're starting the book with heal yourself. And that seems to be, I think, because that's such your personal journey. And I think that's also kind of the information we get from a lot of sort of healing modes,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual, religious. It's like if we can work on our own inner landscape, then the outer landscape, is brighter and better, and we walk through the world causing less harm. And I think that, I think, yeah, maybe talk a little bit more about the journey that the reader might go on. You don't have to give away the whole book, obviously, but I think that people are coming to this book to transform. People are coming because they're maybe feeling caught in something or feeling
Yeah. Yeah.
crunchy, or they're struggling with their own aloneness or their own misbehavior, or just their relationships are, maybe they're even struggling in their relationships to like slow down on the control, quit being
Yeah.
obsessive, things like that. So, I think people are coming to this book to transform something, or have reminders where to pause and reflect and take a different course, maybe. So I'm kind of curious if you could explain just the journey that the reader might go on in this book on some level, from heal yourself to the end, which really felt much more collective, which I was happy to see. And it felt like you were really sort of trying to reflect the times, not only, but just systemically how we can make changes and better society, which
Yeah.
I was really happy that you did that. So maybe talk about that journey a little bit.
Yeah, so the book really walks you through, like the first chapter is called Self-Awareness and the last chapter is called A New Life. And in the middle of the whole book is called The Love Between Us. So it's trying to build that bridge, between that personal inner work and that collective result. Like, what is it that happens when millions of people around the world are actively trying to get to know themselves, actively trying to build their self-love. And first, it starts with you, because the book is really meant to be like a self-reflective companion, you know, where you are doing your own sort of like very loving self-analysis, and you can pick up the book, look at any page, and you know, it gives you something that you can think about and reflect on and see, okay, like how can this help me bring new clarity to where I'm at in my own path, and where can I grow next. But then the journey of it is just something that I've seen really in my own life. It's like the more I got to know myself, the less self-centered I hope I'm becoming. And then that automatically brought new fruits to my relationships with my wife and with my family members and with my friends. You know, a lot of my relationships were incredibly superficial when I didn't know myself before the healing had even began. And as I did start getting to know myself, this like love, because my background before that is in activism. Like I grew up very young. I was 15 years old when I was, you know, when I started organizing. And I did that for until I was about 26. But that love that I had for the world, I realized was pretty limited until I started meditating. And when I started actually doing that inner work and started doing that actual unbinding and letting go of that baggage that I've been carrying throughout my life, I realized that there was more love, not just for the idea of a better world, but for that actual, you know, being with someone and having patience for them, having compassion towards them, and then starting to just think a little more critically about how we can scale up compassion from the individual level to the collective level, which I think is going to be much more possible when a lot more people are at first able to love themselves better. And that's what the real hope of the book is, for you to be able to see that if you're able to do your own inner work and love yourself well, then you can then be a part of this sort of movement to create a structural compassion. Because right now we live in a world that are, you know, it's composed of systems of harm. But how can we switch all that energy so it can be set up, you know, to just have systems of nourishment, systems of compassion, systems that are really fulfilling people, really helping people fulfill their own needs, and just helping people flourish, which is not quite what we have today.
And I mean, I know that you and I both kind of bond over this in terms of an activism slant, but also just the deeper knowledge of like, why are we in a system of harm? Like, why have we lived in that presence so long? And why does it seem like there is, I mean, I think obviously for certain cultures, this is nothing's new here. The system, you know, there was no system of harm before, and then things happen, and now we're kind of all in this systemic path, and in these cycles of sort of destruction in a sense. And I'm wondering, just like in your research and where you're at spiritually with it, where you think that comes from, and when someone feels, I mean, these are kind of two separate questions, but that's how my mind's working today. There's that, like, do you really feel like what is that system of harm, and do you really feel like it's actually possible in our lifetime, me and you, however long that may be, to kind of really move into a system of nurturing and like growth and expansion and care? I mean, do we really find that to be possible? And then I think that, you know, thinking about, yeah, we can think, okay, I need to do the work to personally heal, but obviously we see that there are systems in place that really harm certain types of people, certain cultures, certain races. And it would seem that the system is just holding people back and not even allowing that room for almost for self-healing work to even matter potentially.
Right.
I'm just wondering, when I say all that, kind of how can you guide me through that a little bit?
Yeah, let's start from the beginning. So there's this little model that I've been sort of thinking inside of for the past 2 years, and it's human habit versus human nature. So I really think a lot of the world's problems are based in these sort of like evolutionarily driven motivations, like that are, you know, fear, aggression, hate, greed, these sort of fundamental protective modalities that really kind of like exist in the mind, these means that we use to get the things that we, immediately need to survive. So I think this survival mentality is pretty widespread. The whole world has it, either it's been given to us evolutionarily, but at the same time, it's also been reaffirmed in our childhoods and as we've grown up. But one thing that I've noticed in just people who do introspective work, who really try to get to know themselves, is that sort of survival mentality doesn't totally go away, but what does happen is that you peel back enough layers that this very natural, what I would call real human nature, which the Western world has really gotten incorrectly, this really innate, powerful ability to have love, to have compassion for others, to be able to think creatively, to be able to have new energy for old problems, right? To be able to engage with them in a deeper way, and to be able to connect more deeply with the human beings around you. This happens to a lot of people. It isn't something that is like unique or special, or it's not something that is, I would even say, rare. I think a lot of people who start to get to know themselves, they do have this bubbling up of their natural human nature, and they do set aside a lot of their human habit, and they're able to think much more, even though it takes courage to shift from fear to love. A lot of people are doing it, and they're doing it on their individual daily lives. So to me, being able to see that not only happening in my own life, because like literally even like before I even started meditating, writing was never an option. Like I had no access to my creativity. It was literally just all blocked up in my human nature. And once I started undoing a lot of my like the serious anxiety and sadness that I was dealing with before meditating, that creative aspect of me just started coming forward. And I see the same thing with my friends who, people who are artists, people who are not artists, people who, live, who do the 9 to 5, they are able to bring this new love and energy into all the things they do. And I think it's expanding. I think we do live in a very special time where there are a lot of different healing modalities that are available to people in a way that's historically unforeseen. I think we live in a pretty special time because you can Google search, like, what can I do for my anxiety? And you're going to get some pretty good leads. There's going to be anything from like actual like psychiatric options, or to deal, one-on-one therapy, or different types of meditations, very light forms of meditations, very serious forms of meditation, or, like even like there's just so much out there now for people to be able to deal with their trauma or their intense emotions that they're carrying. And I do think it takes sort of a lack of fearlessness around your idealism to be able to scale that up, to not just leave that on the individual level. But what gives me hope is like, just think, ask yourself, like, what was the world like in 1850? And compare that to the way it is now in 2020, 2021. It's a radically different world. And what helped shift that, to be able to create a slightly more humane world, or a much more humane world, it was people who were unafraid to speak and walk their truth, to be idealists, to be able to have literally a dream and then make it real. And I think we can continue doing that work. And I'm excited to see how that all unfolds, because like I don't have all the answers. I just know that when you heal the mind becomes more powerful. And I see that happening to my friends all the time, and it's incredibly encouraging. So I don't think it's a 5-year fix. Like, no, healing takes a long time. Global change takes a long time, especially undoing like centuries old systemic forms of harm. But I do feel incredibly, inspired by the fact that if people are willing to deal with their like inner blogs and traumas and all these really heavy things that we all carry, then when they turn their much clearer eyes out into the world, they're going to be able to just like, I don't know, move with a new effectiveness that we really need. Because the world is a better place in some manners, but it can become so much more humane. And I think it's just a matter of trying. You go deep within yourself and you'll be able to create a much more beautiful world, especially when you multiply that by millions and billions.
All right, Diego for president. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that was just an excellent synthesis of of all the things that we need to be thinking about. I think in that, when we're talking about healing the mind, I do know that, um, I think your book Inward was really focusing on that, and this book obviously is as well. And I think that I think it's important to know about the role that silence plays in your life, in your healing, in your work, and also chaos. How that comes into play.
Yeah,
You guys are
totally.
chaos friends. We ain't all peaceful, but all the time. But I think I've been reflecting on that as well. Like we're coming out of this sort of like, in a sense, silence, isolation, but what a chaotic and stressful period.
Yeah.
And so how do we really, I just want to know how that's impacted your life, how you found it. How does someone find that just in their everyday moments? And that seems like a little bit of the remedy. I think that, yeah, just kind of talk about your connection to silence and to chaos.
Well, so chaos helped me find silence. I think before the healing started, life was just extraordinarily chaotic. And one thing that especially with like my most precious relationship, the relationship that I have with my wife, I think when I look back on it, we always had a very deep, deep connection, but we weren't able to build on it in a profound way, or neither of us were able to bring any emotional maturity to it in the first half of it, because we were basically living in a hurricane together. We like had a lot of love for each other, but the love was, it needed work. It was just like really, really full of attachments, and we struggled together. And then after we found silence, we both started meditating. We were slowly able to do our own personal self-awareness building work that then helped just bring a new harmony into our relationship. But I think so I practice Vipassana meditation, and it's this like really old style that originates from the Buddhist teaching that comes from Myanmar, and it's taught by S.N. Goenka, and it has just radically, immensely changed my life for the better. And it's the one thing that I do that is like my main form of nourishment and growth. Really, it's just like it helps me understand myself and the world around me much better. And without it, I wouldn't be a writer. I wouldn't. There was so much in my life just would be totally different if I never started meditating, especially in that technique. But I go away to retreats pretty often. So like one of the main things that I do is at the beginning of a year, I set aside my time for retreats. So like I know kind of scheduled out, like even in January, I know that in May and in October and in November, I have these courses planned so that I can go away and be in total silence. I can give up my phone. I can, just, almost like live like a monk for 10 days or 30 days or 45 days. And it helps me so much to be able to totally unplug. And I know this is like not something that everybody could do, or something that people may not want to do. It's totally fine. I'm not encouraging all people to meditate. What I do like to encourage people to do is like find something that works for you. That's like key. I really believe that all of us have very different conditioning, but at the same time, all of us can find some sort of method, whether, like I was saying before, whether that's like one-on-one therapy or a really good psychiatrist, or some sort of meditation, or there's so much more out there beyond those three things that I'm mentioning. But you can find something that can help you navigate your own inner world. But for me, that silence, that meditation has taught me how to cultivate, or it's not even just silence, it brings silence into my life, but it's really the building of equanimity. It's the building of just not reacting, not having craving towards everything, not having aversion towards difficult things, and just being able to observe reality as it is, as opposed to constantly imposing my control over it. And that's just, yeah, it's been key to my nourishing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, I know how important that is to you, and you've definitely influenced me there, and always trying to get me to go on those retreats, and I was not able to because of Corona. That was my excuse. That's just a long time for me, but I do
Yeah,
meditate as well. And actually,
you went to India, and that was like huge, and you were like
huge, yeah,
you were
it was.
putting in work.
I was putting in the work, and I put in a lot of work now. You know, so I do recommend meditation, whatever that is, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, because I think that when we talk about clarity, which I think is really key, because in India I was really like, you know, I've been sober for like almost 4 years.
Mhm.
And so the journey of sobriety then became about a journey of clarity, like understanding the idea of clarity. And then in India, talking more with the Buddhist nuns and monks, that was a real big theme, meaning like train the mind to remove obstacles, remove these judgments, remove these desires and attachments and clingings, which is very difficult. I mean, that is the human experience.
So it's so hard.
And you know, I am clinging right now, baby, to every little thing. But you know, and I think that, and that can overwhelm relationships. So I think what I'm trying to get at is the process of however you find clarity. And I think that a lot of times it is meditation, because you can find the gap between identifying with your thoughts or over identifying with your thoughts and following them as a story and thinking that they are you. And really, it's a lot of imagination work happening,
Yeah.
and a lot of desiring and clinging happening. So for me, meditation really is about just finding that momentary, like, snap into nothingness, where I'm able to not over identify with those thoughts. I think for some people, though, yes, obviously therapy can provide that self-reflection, and that little bit of that reflection provides a little bit of a gap or a pause. Maybe it's cooking, maybe it's those sort of meditative, just sort of leaving the realm of overthinking, right? But I think that, you know, the title of your book, Clarity and Connection, I think both seem really important. That seems like a very important evolution and interaction. And I
Mhm.
think what I'm finding really specifically enjoyable about the book is, yes, the reminders of like, oh, I'm grasping, oh, I'm going for those desires real hard, and I'm pushing people away, and I'm acting a little bit crazy, I'm a little bit obsessive. But that's, you know, my mind's in overdrive. But I think that it, a lot of the book is about relationship, um, clarity and relationship. Um, and I think that what I thought was really compelling and interesting is that it's not just about, you know, for people that are in relationship. Yes, it's a super helpful book to just sort of, when things get overwhelming, there's a lot of little reminders in there that just take a minute, you know, just pause for a minute, um, and try to be supportive of your partner, and try to be less controlling, and try to like create a garden that nourishes and nurtures each other together. So there's a lot of beautiful reminders in there. And I think it's also for the person that's like longing for a healthy relationship, that may be struggling to find one. There's
Yeah.
a lot of great information in there. And I also think it's really a lot about how we form and develop really beautiful friendships, and what those, how to create a standard when you maybe don't have one.
Yeah.
And I just think I wanted to read really quickly, because you're my friend. I know we're digitally connecting, but you know, I'm really grateful to have you as a friend with so much wisdom and so much information to also remind me that, you know, I just think personally leading up to this event, I was feeling quite chaotic, and really working on my attachments. I think now is a very intense time for attachments to be acting up. And I just want to say I'm grateful that this lined up with kind of my own personal need to realign, to
Yeah.
shift perspective, to come back into my well-being. And so it just seemed really serendipitous and almost symbolic to have your book arrive. And you know, I've been reading it, quite a bit of it, and it's just been a really beautiful reminder to kind of like slow down, connect with myself. I do have the tools to find health and be healthy, and not project my negative clinging attitude, but to kind of um, create a little bit of nurturing energy in myself and to other people. But anyway, that's a side note. So thank you. Thank you for the reconnection. It came right at the right time. Let me tell you, we'll get into that another day. on another day and another day. But on page 102, here we are. I like the cover too with the water ripple. Okay, good choice. On 102, you say the attributes of a good friend are they feel like home, they are honest with you, they remind you of your power, they support you in your healing, they have a revitalizing presence, they hold a vision of your success, they support you in new adventures, they lift you up with joy and laughter, and they bring out the best version of you. And then I want to read this other page really quickly next to it, 103. Friendships that feel like home are naturally disarming. They remind us that we can't stop. They remind us that we can stop the performance and come forward the way we authentically feel. The deepest bonds are spaces where vulnerability is welcome. Good friendships have a reciprocal quality. When either person is experiencing struggle, the other is ready to hold space, to listen without judgment, and with a heart full of compassion. Meaningful friendships contain a bond that rises above competition. We feel a friend's victory as if it were our own, true sympathetic joy, the joy we feel for the success of another in the absence of jealousy. So that sounds cute. No, I mean, it's a really beautiful framework. And I do find that to be my most exciting and enriching friendships have those components. But can you kind of guide me through like how you're coming to this philosophy or this understanding, and just any comments you want on that part of like the friendship section of this book?
Yeah.
And why we all need to have good friends in our lives and how important that is, especially right now.
It's so important. Yeah, thank you for highlighting those. I really feel like I just took a while to learn how to be a good friend, and I still don't quite feel like I'm a good friend. Like I'm incredibly imperfect, just like everybody else. So, but what I do know that's really important is that to be able to change a pattern, you first need to be able to see it. And I noticed from my own, I keep going back to this period before the healing. I was oblivious to my patterns. Like I was so, my relationships were incredibly superficial, especially my friendships. And they were all sort of based around pleasure seeking. We would always be, looking for the next party. We would be smoking together all the time or drinking together all the time. And just like, I was in a situation where I was like using my friends to just get away from myself. But because I was so busy in that, I just didn't see like, how could I step up? How can I support people? How can I be a better friend? Until I started having those qualities towards myself and started practicing those qualities with, between my wife and I, and we started figuring out how to properly support each other. But then it immediately, turned and was like, okay, I need to bring that same type of like compassionate energy to my outer circle as well, to my friends, and not just like keep it to one other person. So I think it was just kind of realizing how much I haven't done a good job and how I could do a better job being supportive of other people. And I think it's, it takes time, because, and it's also pretty fun with friends, because it's not like we all do the same introspective work. Like a lot of my closest friends, they don't meditate every day. They, it's not, they're pretty, they have a degree of self-awareness, and they have some sense of emotional maturity. So we can be really honest with each other, but they're not like on the same boat. Like, oh, they're not also meditating twice a day and going to retreats all the time. But you can still have like a really powerful, deep, meaningful friendship, and still be able to have those like characteristics of honesty and authenticity, so that both of you feel supported, or all of you feel supported, depending on the size of the group. And I think with it all starts with radical honesty, but not just radical honesty in a like, tough sense, but like in a compassionate sense. Like you need to be honest with yourself about what you need, and then be able to calmly and compassionately communicate that with the people around you, and then not try to coerce them in any way, or try to like force them into like giving you what you want, but actually see if they can meet your level of commitment, or if they can then be like, oh, if you need support and you ask me for support, let me see, when can I show up for you? I have this amount of time free. It's really about, trying to tell people what you need, and then they then telling you, okay, like, let me see how I can show up for you, and being able to have those kind of clear commitments. But all of that, it takes time, it takes patience, it also takes like intuitive connection. Like, you need to know and feel inside of yourself, like, this is someone that I want to build with. And I remember when I met you, like, I met you like once, and I was like, okay, this person is my friend, and I want to hang out, I want to spend time together. And we're really honest with each other, and when we are together, we have the best time, and we talk about real stuff. And it feels incredibly like liberating to be honest with you about the things that I'm struggling with or how I want to grow. And I remember I was like opening up to you. I was like, okay, I need to grow in this way as a writer, and that way, like, I'm glad with how inward went, and just like really telling you stuff that I'm not telling anybody else besides Sarah, besides my wife. But I think those relationships, like, they're built over time. So when you especially enter like a new friendship or a new intimate relationship, like, understand that that person is equally imperfect as you are. So there should be some level of, like, some ability to have some emotional maturity there that you can build off of, but don't expect perfection, because no, you're just not going to find a flawless person anywhere on the earth. And so if you do find like, oh, not only are you connecting with this person, but this is someone I can build with, and we can be honest with each other, and we can enjoy our time together, then go for it.
Mm. Yeah, I think when we first met, it was clearly that kind of, it's just, I just live for those moments, because it's like a grace surrounds it. It's like you just I just felt like you appreciated me, because we were on a panel together, and I was coming off the show I was making, and I was, lit up, but also very like burdened by the pains of the world and the trauma and the suffering. And that's really what I wanted to talk about. But a lot of people aren't really wanting to have that conversation quite yet.
Mhm.
And so you kind of feel alone. You kind of feel like I'm not just walking around negative Nancy status. I just am like able to hold the pain also. And I
Mhm.
felt like just in a few brief statements, you like, I felt like you respected that kind of depth that I was entering, and you kind of saw the space that I was in. And, I think it kind of starts there. It's just kind of it's just like an immediate seeing. And
Yeah.
the respect is there. And then the respect builds through like spending time and nurturing. But like like Sa, our other mutual friend, it's like, we're all wanting to be I don't know. We just have in common that we want to be the most lit, right? We want to get the most, we just want to get the most out of life. We don't want to be, in submission and bored and acting out and numb. We want to be alive. And
Mhm.
you want to be surrounded by people that push you to be the most alive that you can be, and to be your greatest potential. And I think that the more we surround ourselves by those people that see us, respect us, and support our greatest potential,
Mhm. Mhm.
even and see where we're gruesome and where we're acting out, and we have patience and love for that, because I see your potential.
Yeah.
And I think that we just need to find ways to offer each other more of that grace in our walking everyday life in general, to strangers, to people you see at the supermarket. And I think I'm trying to work more on like really offering that energy just in an all-encompassing way.
Mhm.
But I just wanted to throw that out there. So thank you for being my friend. Thank
Likewise.
you for your friendship. But I want to talk about Sarah. I want to talk about Sarah because
Sure.
I love some Sarah. Hi,
Yeah.
Sarah. I hope you're watching. Lots of love.
I think
And
she is watching.
I
I
just
think
love
she is
Sarah
watching
because
downstairs.
she's watch. Okay, hey. I just love also Sarah. I met her the second time that you and I met on our retreat, and I like you two separately, of course, and I loved you two together. It was like this super warm, comforting energy, and I'm often kind of like a wayward child, even though I'm older than you. Um,
Yeah, we kept we
and
kept we kept joking about how we were going to adopt you.
yeah, like I'm still for it, still for it. I'm coming your way. But I know that Sarah is just we can't forget Sarah on any level, not that you are, but like she's a major support for this book. I mean,
Yeah.
for this wisdom, for this work. I mean, a lot of this
Everything.
is also Sarah. I mean, Sarah is, talk about Sarah's potential for one. I just want to say, because she's such a light, she's such a luminous, gentle, like a gentle giant light.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that so much of your work is evolving around how that relationship just kind of like expands and gets
Totally.
brighter and bigger. And you know, we're benefiting from the work that you two are doing together, I feel, in these words. And so I wanted to give her a shout out and just say how much I feel her presence in this. And I think maybe you could talk just a little bit about, I know that I think a lot of people go through this. There are messy periods in relationships. There's where people are both a little bit chaotic and frazzled and attached. And your relationship example is one where you worked on healing together. You meditate together, you practice together, you work on patience together. And I wanted you to talk about the importance of that, a little bit about that journey. And then just, you know, also, are you annoying because you're a perfect couple? Maybe. No, but I'm saying, how do we relate to that as people that are not like me? Okay, I'm single, I'm going through the motions, constantly about ready to become a monk, because you know that this journey is a little bit rough sometimes. What can we get out of understanding your journey, and how does that work out in this book? I think it's important.
Yeah. So like, yeah, there's definitely no perfection. I think what we have learned how to do is to like manage our projections onto each other to a certain degree. Like and even that, we still have a ways to go. But we, you know, like there's this like one, like I think it was her that she was the one who did it first. But I remember she started doing this thing, and this was after we started meditating, where she would come home from work back when we were still living in Brooklyn, and she would immediately let me know her barometer, like exactly how she felt. Like, you know, I'm already upset about something that happened at work. I don't feel great. And then she, you know, that's her giving me the clear signal, like, she don't feel great, you know, perfect. So let me do my best to come and just be supportive and like, you know, pick up more of the like evening housework, or just try to make the situation for her lighter. Because the same way that, you know, she doesn't feel good, like I might not feel good in 3 days or 2 days, you know? So, but that like that simple little system, even that she developed, that she, you know, with her honesty, that just like set off this like snowball effect, which was like, okay, so if you don't feel good, then, and by you letting me know, then what's happening the times when you don't let me know? You know, oftentimes what both of us do, what all of us do, is that we will feel tension from a previous moment. And then our minds that are still tense will then find other objects, people, or situations and project that same tension and sort of create these narratives so that we can keep feeding that agitation. And being able to like catch that like false narrative that's just building up all that heat inside of your mind, and just do that work of realizing that it's there and then not letting it control your actions. Because one thing that I've learned from meditating is that you can feel the tension in your mind without letting it dominate you. And I think that's like a skill that takes a lot of time to develop, and it's not something that I've mastered at all. But even having a little bit of that ability to be like, oh, I don't feel great right now, so you know what, I'm going to move through the rest of the day very gently. And I'm also going to be pretty mindful that I don't lash out unnecessarily at people, and that I don't cause any unnecessary arguments. And that's a situation where you're not like suppressing anything, but you're also you're just being with it. And that helps it not explode into this bigger thing. But yeah, I mean, honestly, Sarah's like all over that book. Like, she's my wife, she's the center of like my world. And we, you know, we have this like relationship where as soon as we met, there was like a deep connection there. And that was like way back when, you know, she was 18 and I was 19. But it felt powerful in the beginning, and I knew that I wanted to be around her, but I didn't know how to properly nourish that connection, and she didn't either. We just didn't know how to treat each other well. We didn't know how to treat ourselves well. And that continued until, we did our first meditation courses. I did mine at 24, she did hers at 23. And then slowly the work really began, and a lot of that time, I think the first like few years when we started meditating, things were still kind of rough, and this kind of like chaotic motion was happening. But over time, that harmony inside of us as individuals was developing, that self-awareness was developing, and then we started seeing like pretty good results in our relationship, because we were able to, when we would have disagreements, when we would have fights, we wouldn't get all crazy like the way we used to, and we would be able to just like pay more respect to each other's perspective. Like, yeah, I'm upset and you're upset, but that my upsetness does not negate yours. You have all the right to be upset as well. But she's just like, she's critical to everything. And I think a lot of the pieces, especially with clarity and connection, a lot of the relationship pieces were written during the pandemic, when we were like at that time we were living in the Bronx, when we were like in the Bronx, just like huddling down and trying to survive and figure everything out just like everybody else. But we were trying to figure out like, yeah, like how do things work? And I would tell her about pieces that I was thinking about, or she would come to me and tell me, I've been noticing this particular pattern that I see, that she would see in herself or in me or in the people around us. And we would try to like dig a little deeper into it and see like, how can we put this into words? And yeah, she's just like so incredibly valuable to all of the work that I do. And also to just like, she's like my biggest teacher. And I love that we can just, have our own world together. But at the same time, we're kind of like just always trying to lift each other up to take that like next step forward in our personal separate individual growth. So like we do a lot of meditating together and a lot of courses together, a lot of meditation courses together, but we also do them separately, because we love being together, but we also support each other and having individual lives. But yeah, she's the best. But she's like a super private person, so I don't even like post pictures of her or anything like that. But Ian, you can vouch that she's real.
She's real. She's real. She's
Yeah.
mine. What are you going to do when I move in then? You're not going to have any privacy. I'm going to be there all the time. You have an extra room or what?
We do have a guest room now. Yeah. Yeah. It's just the two of us. Yeah.
Okay. Don't got to tell me twice. Well, yeah, we love Sarah. So I'm glad that we were able to give her some props.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see you one day again, Sarah. Sending you a lot of love. But I think that, talking about the pandemic, and not that I'm trying to focus on the pandemic, but I think it's important right now because we're at a pivotal moment. And I think that the book really comes at the exact right time, at least it is for me. So I imagine that is the same for a lot of people, that there's just this bursting forth of energy, especially in America. We're getting vaxxed, we're coming out, it's spring. It's not only spring, but we're coming kind of out of this collective isolation. And I am noticing such chaotic, I'm not saying that's negative or positive, by the way, it's just a lot of energy coming our way. What I'm noticing is that I'm kind of, as much as I can self-analyze and be reflective and also conscious, I'm acting in a lot of unconscious ways. And I'm noticing that there's a lot of unconscious behavior kind of colliding. And it's a little bit harmful. It's a little bit scary. It's fun, but it's also just like, I'm just feeling like it's uncharted territory in a way. So I think just because I'm experiencing kind of like this kind of frenetic energy, I don't know, I just paused getting ready for this thinking that, wow, we haven't even had time to reflect really on like what we just went through. We don't have any sort of like larger systems of healing or thought in place, or time to, space to reflect or to really grieve. And look at places like India right now that are just, it's devastating to see that many people getting ill and dying. So as we're bursting forth, the world's crying out for help. And so as we're wanting to go to parties and hang out, vaxxed and living free, how do we not inflict harm on each other? How do we bring a certain level of awareness? And I think that in that, maybe talk about how, the self-healing journey, the journey to kind of become conscious is not always an arrow. You know, there's a lot of, I just feel for me, there's a lot of like progress and then back steps and progress and back steps. And I'm feeling right now like learning a lot, but I'm, I guess, trying not to be upset with myself when I'm acting in an unconscious way, and trying to deeply connect with people, but there's just sort of a block happening. I wondered what you thought about like that. Like, what advice do you have for us right now? I don't know if you're experiencing it living quietly in the woods, but I'm in Brooklyn. I'm noticing a major energy shift, which I obviously knew was coming. And I know that people are getting caught up in it. And I want to offer some advice for like how to stay steady, stay grounded, and go with the flow.
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's funny,
A lot of words.
listening to you talk about that. It's like I had an image in my mind of people literally tumbling out of their homes, because it's like
Yes.
they've been so, we've all been so cooped up in our tiny little circles that it's like we're like ready to just break out. And I mean, I feel that myself. Like I miss my friends. Like I miss you. I haven't seen you in so long. And I'm excited for the next time that I get to see you and I get to hang out with, my other people in New York City. And but I think on like one of the key points I can tell, I can suggest to people is like, don't forget that alone time can be nourishing. So the same way that you're ready to go out and socialize, like bring that, give it some balance, because it's obviously like human beings are very interdependent human beings. We're totally interdependent. We're a collective. Even though we don't fully want to admit that, we're incredibly dependent on each other. So connection is beautiful and it needs to be watered like any garden. But at the same time, like take the time that you need to be fully revitalized and rejuvenated. And a lot of times for people, that's like just chilling by yourself. So don't forget that this summer. And then at the same time, like pick up your daily, like what's your daily way to nourish yourself? Like, especially if you like don't have a meditation technique, like, are you journaling? Like, are you, what is it that you're doing to try to like take out a bit of that tension in your mind and put it down on paper, or have a system where you are able to like talk to specific friends, or you have a therapist or something where you're able to deal with whatever's happening inside of you in a healthy way, so that you're not taking that like inner agitation and then just allowing that to take control of your actions and do all of your maneuvering for you this summer, because that can totally happen as well. So, but I think having that like, how do you heal yourself and how can you set that up in a daily format, even if it's like a little bit, even if it's 5 minutes a day. I think keeping those like small victories, real and accomplishable, like if you can actually accomplish them, it actually does help build momentum so that you can accomplish bigger and bigger things that are directly for your personal growth. I think setting that up for the day-to-day system, I think it may seem hard, but especially if it's something like your, 5 minutes of journaling, 5 minutes of meditating, 5 minutes of something, like that's going to add up over time, and it's going to help you really make your clarity a bit stronger, and hopefully, you can make great decisions from that more stable foundation.
Yes, it is hard, I think. I mean, I just think the energy is so overwhelming. And it doesn't have to be, I don't think. I can just really sense it.
Yeah.
And I see it playing out in my body and my system. And I have techniques and tools that I use, and I'm like, they're getting thrown in the trash right now. And I'm just understanding that of the journey. It's like, it's not always so straightforward, but we have to rely on some of the wisdom from our friends, but some of the tools that we had in place to just keep calm, to find that grounded space. So thanks for sharing that. And I think that I just want to remind people that, it's exciting to be in communication and in connection. And I think that I think your book is really powerful in terms of the way it's able to distill spirituality, sort of the Buddhist thoughts of Vipassana, and psychology, and you're able to like really form it in ways that just symbolically remind us to, okay, take a moment, remind yourself of what's good in you, what's conscious in you, and your just best intentions. And I do think that, I mean this sincerely, I think that this book coming out right now is no coincidence. I think that I just really want to encourage people that I don't want to personally, I see how I'm acting and I have tools, right? And I'm thinking about people that just don't have anything in place, which I understand. There's no judgment at all. But I don't want to live in a world where we're just colliding unconsciously. I mean, it's just not the ideal world where we're trying to form sort of like an open-hearted connection that's nurturing and nourishing and healing our planet and our people. And so I just really recommend the book for just tons of golden nuggets of reminders and information about how to stay centered, honestly, how to stay healed and healing, how to stay honoring to yourself and your family and your friends and your community and to the greater good. And I just really enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it. I'll continue to read it and share it with my friends. And so that's just my pitch for it. Okay, but it's important right now. And I think you can tell that I mean that sincerely. What I think we should do though, is I think maybe we open it up to some of the attendees' questions. So if you have any more, throw them in there really quickly. And then Evan, I would love to bring it back just for one little closeout. Maybe we'll do like 10 minutes of questions and then I'll come back to you. We'll close it out really fast and just say one last goodbye. So if that sounds good to everyone, throw in some of your questions now if you don't have them, and maybe we will, Evan, when you're ready, go for it.
Beautiful.
Or I can.
And thanks, David. This has been a wonderful conversation so far. I have loved it so much. And thank you all for your questions so far. The first one I want to ask is from Dana, who is wondering, what are your suggestions on how to help train your mind to move on from, so to speak, outdated thinking or past thoughts? How to not compare new relationships with things that have happened poorly in the past?
That's a great question. I think, especially if your mind is like leaning very heavily on the past, then, I mean, it might sound like trite coming from me because I'm a meditator, but like, that's literally what meditation does. It tries to bring you to the present moment. So it helps you like literally develop these qualities of the mind that can bring you back to what's actually happening, that's real, that's right in front of you. And I know that's, one of the key things of what's happening with the technique that I do, Vipassana. So it's something, if that's something you're interested in, want to try, you can go to dhamma.org. And it's a great technique. It's difficult. The course is not easy. And check out if it's something that you want to do. But especially if you don't want to be like dominated by the past and constantly sort of measuring the present through the lens of the past, then that requires like actual, mental cultivation. And a lot of happiness does require you like building these sort of new characteristics so that you're not relying on these past patterns that are just reactive, but you can actually be positively active, positively respond to what's happening, and be able to positively assess what's happening right in front of you.
Thank you, Diego. And thank you, Dana, for that question. The next one I want to ask is from Jackie. And Jackie is wondering, I've been on a conscious inward journey for about 5 years now at the age of 26. And the deeper I go inward, the harder a time I have often of balancing the part of me that has been raised in and a part of the material, busy, academic, or tech world. How do I manage this professionally? How would you suggest to think about people who are deeply in the spiritual world, but also working in a very material world? I want to really step into my calling, but I often feel stuck between two worlds.
Yeah, I think it's really important to, I asked a really similar question once to a meditation teacher in the tradition that I'm a part of. And he like shook me up by the answer he gave. Because I was telling him, I was like, oh, this particular year, I won't be able to meditate a lot. I have a bunch of different, be able to go to a lot of meditation retreats. And he was like, you need to stop thinking about that these two things are separate. they're not separate. It's not like your spiritual life and your like work 9 to 5 life or whatever goal that you're trying to achieve. Like all of that is the same. It's this one life. So being able to take away that division between the two and seeing them as this like one thing that you're moving to, and through both of them, you are, through your like development of self-awareness and your like spiritual endeavors, you're learning how to be more effective. And then you practice that by living your life the way you want to live it, by achieving the goals that you want to achieve. So I think removing that separation between the two is like critical. It's helped me a lot because, whether you're like in service in there while you're like cultivating yourself, you're also in service out here, and you're, figuring out like, what's my real aspiration? How can I make it happen? And how can I use my time well? And you'll see that there's like just like a lot of merit in both. Like I think a lot of times people, when they do go to retreats or they do a lot of like deep inner work, they think that that's just like the best use of their time. But every time that you commit a wholesome action, like it's equally beneficial. So just, live well. Like that's how you know how much you've grown, whether it's spiritual or not, because growth is for everybody.
Amen. Thank you, Diego. Yes, thank you, Jackie, for the question. The next question I'd like to ask is from Heather, who says, I find your writing profound. Thank you for your book. I respect you sharing your insights with the world and with us and with me as an individual. Would you be open to sharing what writers have influenced you? Whose elegant simplicity in particular do you respect? I think of your writing as the height of elegant simplicity. It's hard to express.
That's so nice. Thank you so much. There's two people that come to mind. In terms of like writing, Herman Hesse has had the biggest, like by far, influence on my writing. I think after I read Siddhartha a few times, I like was able to start, like I was so inspired by it that I started writing poetry. And Herman Hesse, Jiddu Krishnamurti, in terms of like hard, like spiritual, like get to know yourself stuff. I think he was one of the wisest people by far. Obviously, like the Buddha, like if you go back to and read the really old, like ancient 2,600-year-old suttas that are, kind of encode his teachings and what happened in his life. Man, that stuff is incredibly inspiring and really straightforward. So straightforward that it's like deceptively straightforward. You can read it and be like, oh, this isn't. I remember the first time I read the Dhammapada, I was not impressed. And then I read it again after like 3 years of meditation, and I was like, oh, this was actually so over my head that I didn't see value in it. So yeah, Herman Hesse, the Dhammapada, check out the Bhagavad Gita. That's incredibly elegant and beautiful. And check out Jiddu Krishnamurti. He's just really, especially Jiddu Krishnamurti's final journal. It's a book called Krishnamurti to Himself, which is like, it kind of just summarizes in the clearest, simplest way all of his like philosophical work.
Wonderful. Thank you, Diego. Yes, and thank you, Heather, for the question. I think that's all the questions I have so far. So last chance to throw one in, if you're holding on to one. And meanwhile, maybe I should kick it back to Ian. Ian, do you want to step in while we wait, or do you want to give?
Yeah, no. Let's. I feel like I can step in. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I had mute and. I don't know how to work all this stuff. Where's my intern? Yeah, thanks for those. I can see those influences. I was just picturing myself walking around your yard all in a tizzy. So I'm wondering, I'm loving that you moved away. You moved away from the chaos.
Yeah. And it's funny, it aligned with the pandemic, but Sarah and I have been planning on moving for like 3 years. And we've always had a dream of like being in nature. Like I grew up in the city, and I grew up in Boston, and then I lived in New York City for almost 7 years. So I was like, enough with the concrete. I need to have some trees around me. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that the last line of your your where you live quietly and meditate daily.
It's
I
literally,
love that
it's
in your
funny.
bio.
We had a back and forth about that with my editor, but it's literally like that's like all we do. We're just chilling, we're doing our work and we meditate daily, and life is pretty quiet here and it's nice. I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, I can tell that it's having an impact. I think that I just want to say thanks to everyone for joining us in this conversation. I hope that people got a little richer from it. And I certainly did. And I certainly did from your book as well. I will say that I really recommend people sign up for your newsletter that I've been reading. And I think that I'm seeing even there, let me put it on the table. I feel you're expanding the form there. I'm pretty sure in a little while we're going to get a full-fledged book that will have much longer longer discourse, if I'm correct in that, which is exciting. I mean, listen, I love the way that you write here. I think it's just we're just able to download it, and that's obviously has a lot to do with your success on Instagram and things like that. It's like we just need these sort of symbolic gestures sometimes to get us back into place, or to have us pause or have an aha moment. And so I feel like you kind of conquered, in a way for me, I just want to say critically that sometimes I don't really like that style in general, because I think we call that like poetry, and my grandmother's a poet. And I know what a poem, I mean, I know what rigorous poetry is, but I think with you, it's just super impactful to have all this information sort of just shot at us. And so obviously I feel like as a friend, I'd love to see you carrying that on, but I've been always a major supporter of you doing larger work, and also more on camera and more in-person work. So let's see where that goes. I'm feeling like it's headed in that direction. I just want to end the conversation. Well, wait, really quickly, Angelica has thrown in a really interesting conversation. But I think to make it about larger, there's a conversation about how do you detach completely from an ex. But I think let's make that a little bit on the grander, and then I'll end it. But like, how do we detach from things that that take up our consciousness, that may not be like expanding us into our greatest potential? How do we sort of when something feels like hooked, or somebody's really impacted our lives and we've built a really grand story about it, either that's a long relationship or a short relationship, when someone just really impacted your consciousness and we know that it can't really, it's not really for the benefit of us or for the greater good, what is your advice to move on from that? Thank you, Angelica, because I need some thoughts there as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really critical question that a lot of us are looking to figure that out. I think my 2 cents on that is it's time plus intentional action, and really focusing on nourishing yourself. I think those moments, especially when you like move from heartbreak, like this is the time for you to develop emotional maturity. And especially, and I think this, even if it's not like meant to be harsh at all, but it's those moments when there was a lot of friction in a relationship. We have to be able, like, if we want to grow as individuals, we have to be able to see honestly within ourselves, like, how can I grow from this, right? How can I not, it's not good for us to remain stagnant. If we try to remain stagnant, we're actually moving against the flow of nature, and that actually makes life incredibly difficult. So examine within yourself, like, how can I grow from this? And how can I bring that new growth into new friendships or new relationships? But to be able to like erase a memory, that's not going to happen. But you can release the intensity of the reaction to that memory. And that's something that we can all work on by being more present, by, developing some sort of, your own practice. Like, what is your own practice? Like, ask yourself that, like, do you journal? Do you have a therapist? Do you meditate? What is it that you do to cultivate your mind? What is it that you do to cultivate self-awareness? And by focusing on personal nourishment and by allowing that, time to, it's like allowing time for the sorrow to naturally unfold and then continue with that intentional action, like building that self-awareness, like I was mentioning, focusing on your own healing, focusing on your own personal nourishment, and then taking that new energy and that new cultivation and like using that to make your new connections, your future connections deeper. But just, don't think that the memories are going to be erased. It takes a while to be able to really heal heartache, but it's totally possible. And I wish you the best.
Thank you for that. That was sweet. Bury it in the ground, baby. You were rich. Sometimes you got to do a little bit of ritual here and there, which I tend to lead people on. And sometimes you just got to physically do things, So in a sense, maybe journal about what imprint that had on you that maybe you don't want to carry with you anymore. And I'm saying write that on a piece of paper and burn that mother effer or bury it in the ground. I mean, I do things like that because things leave such deep imprints, and I think we can unearth them and remove them. That's personally how I feel. But I think it takes a lot of intentionality, and you kind of have to look at yourself. And you say that in your first book, like, we can heal ourselves. We are also healers. And I think that I want to encourage, who was that? Sorry.
Angelica.
Mm-hmm. To act, find ways to find, like you're saying, through those processes, but find ways that you can act as your own healer. But I do a lot of baths and rituals that sort of like, just put the intention that I'm kind of crossing a boundary or crossing over and leaving something behind. That doesn't mean it's forever gone, but some of that imprint starts to dwindle. Okay, let's just take five more minutes if you don't mind, because I think Margot had a really super great question. So do you have time?
Sure. One more question. Yeah.
Okay, one more. Sorry. I think that Margot's really talking about vulnerability. And I think that I'm sensing that we're wanting to be open and vulnerable, but it's very difficult right now. And it's very dangerous in a way. And so Margot's saying, let's say, any other tips to finding and cultivating deeper connections? I've been on a long healing journey, but still have a hard time stepping forward in a vulnerable way. How do I practice connecting in a new way instead of falling back into old ways of relating? Yes. So.
Yeah, that's really, that's key. I think it was Margot, right?
Yeah, Margot.
I think that you said the word yourself, like practice. To be able to like open your heart to another person, or even to open it to yourself and like reveal your truth. There isn't like an easy way to do that. It takes a lot of courage to be able to just like bear what's real inside of you. But I think being able to do that in like safe environments, so like one, like finding the right people, and then like gently being able to practice that with people who are like ready to hold space for you. But I think it's something that just takes time. And once you're able to, really like find that like moment in yourself when it's like, okay, like I'm ready to try the difficult thing, then doing it in small amounts until it gets bigger and you feel those bigger shifts, then that's totally, it'll build from there.
Great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. Margot, we wish you well on that journey. We got you energetically. We support. I just want to end here because I think so much of the book is, we're getting so much about our personal evolution and healing and intimacy. And I want to end it on the revolution, baby. What's the bigger picture here, baby? Let's get this revolution popping, honey. But I just love that you're really, meaning like we have to make it collective in a way. We have to understand that our imprint matters and that I'm like you, believe in a better, more fulfilling, richer, beautiful, more wonderful, exciting, energetic, free-flowing, free living, kind of more loving. All those things. I believe that society is possible.
Yeah.
Or we're going to have to live in a commune off the grid, whatever, either way, but let's see what we can do. So I just want to end with this. I'm going to read 2 quick passages toward the end of your book, if that's okay. And then we're going to close it out. I'm going to read it. And
Yeah.
I just really recommend that everyone get your book right now. It's flying off the shelves. I'm seeing on your Instagram, everyone's buying it. I think that it might even be sold out with I don't know. I'm not sure about where it's sold out, but just get it. Um, and I think people know where to follow you, but if you want to say anything there. Okay, no, it's not sold
Well,
out. So it was, and now it's not.
no, yeah, Booksmith is good. And there were some places that it was sold out, but the publisher is working really hard to restock everything.
Okay, and then they can follow your newsletter and things like that, or?
Yeah, please. So the newsletter is like, I mean, Ian alluded to it, but it's been like my favorite new place. Like I put a lot of energy into Instagram, but the newsletter is like, it's like a writing practice that I give myself. So like once a week or almost once a week, like I'm not trying to be too strict with the schedule. I think about 3 times a month, I will just like sit down and be like, what's on my mind, and just like practice long form. And it's not always going to be long. Sometimes it'll be shorter, but lately that's just been what's been coming out. And I'll bounce between like, things about relationships, but lately it's been a lot about personal transformation. And I've been going more towards like the more like bigger themes that I'm always trying to learn about, like impermanence. That's been like my big, if you understand impermanence, then you're going to be able to live a much happier life. But yeah, come hang out for the newsletter. It's youngpueblo.substack.com, and then obviously you can find me on Instagram and wherever, Twitter and Facebook.
Great. Okay, I'm going to close out with reading this passage here. And I just want to say thank you so much, friend, for the love and joy and clarity and wisdom. As everyone knows, you're a wise man. But I just really am grateful for being asked to do this, and to have any opportunity to interact with you is a blessing in my eyes. And I hope that everyone had a fun time, and that we wish you all well, and we send you lots of love and care and beauty on your journey. So on page 241 of the new book, you say, imagine a world where love guides society. People would not be hungry or in danger. Bodies would feel safe and minds fully nourished. Voices would be heard and differences respected. Disputes would be handled without violence or terror, and everyone would have access to the things they need to flourish. Sharing, listening, telling the truth, not harming each other, being kind to one another, cleaning up after ourselves. Essential lessons we were taught as small children would be taken to heart by adults and woven into a new global culture. And then you say, which I think is super great, and then I'm done. Meet those you encounter with genuine compassion. And I do want to say, I think this is so important as we enter the world again, this passage. So this is why I'm reading this. Meet those you encounter with genuine compassion. Live with intentional gentleness. Cultivate peace with your hands and words. Be generous with your kindness. Allow others to share in the bounty of a heart that dedicates itself to goodwill. There are marvels of the human spirit, actions that are most easily taken by healed hearts. Not only do these ways of being help our minds settle into inner peace, but they create safer spaces in a world that is always moving in and out of turmoil. To bring such goodness into the world will benefit many and bring its own countless rewards. Thank you so much for that reminder. I'm carrying that with me on this new journey we're embarking on. And thank you everyone so much for coming. Here we go.
Yeah, thank you all so much for spending time with us. And Ian, I'm incredibly grateful for your friendship, and thank you so much for leading us through this event. This was just beautiful, and I'm really I'm so grateful that this is the way we're kicking off the launch of the book. Thank you.
Oh yes, it's the kickoff. Congratulations, my friend. Such a great job, and I miss you.
Yeah, I miss you too.
Hey, thanks everybody.
Thanks,
Evan.
Have a really good night.
Thank you both. Just what a privilege to be a witness to this conversation. It was really wonderful and intimate and just full of wisdom, and I'm grateful for it. And to you both for being here. Diego, congratulations on the book, and Ian, thank you for leading. And bless you both, and bless you all out there watching. I hope to catch you again in Zoom and then in person in the nearest future. Take care, stay safe, and be well, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.